Good morning. I thought I would, and welcome to Morocco. Wow. I thought I would begin our session on our first session on in this journey on mysticism, prayer, meditation in this stunning ancient land with a poem prayer by Kabir, who was, little is known about this poet, this mystical poet from the 1200s, but that he was born into the Muslim faith. And he blended that on his life journey with Hinduism, which was a very bold thing to do 8 centuries ago. And yet, from such a blend, what happened was he found a partner in a woman who was a mystic from the Hindu tradition. And the two had an ecstatic, mystical bond, not unlike Shams and Rumi, not unlike Teresa and John of the Cross. An ecstatic partnership of the soul. And from such ecstasy comes an electricity that actually ordinary mortals cannot understand. A marriage of what one would call a mystical union of force. One way to think of it is that we are in a world of the finite in search of the infinite, constantly in search of the infinite. And when two people find the infinite, they fall into ecstasy. And that is a language of ecstasy that only they understand. And from it sparks a inner dialogue that they cannot stop speaking. But it comes out in metaphor. It comes out in poetry. There is no logical language for the world the soul experiences, because it's not a literal world, it's a mystical world. And yet if you try to explain what compels you on your inner search, it is not logic that compels you. It's not logical. There's nothing, if I said to you, I define what compels your spiritual search. Write me an essay on what compels you. You would look, you would turn to metaphor. You would say, well, it's like this, and it's like that. It's like what? And you would fall into the language of metaphor. Well, it's like I'm looking for something. What are you looking for? Well, it's like I'm looking for, well, what? Something, I'm looking for what? And then people turn to these words. Some place of inner peace. Well, what does that look like to you? What is that? What is inner peace to you? That's just a word. What is that? And then you come to a wall. You come to a wall because vocabulary comes to a wall. Your vocabulary comes to a wall. You've run out of words. There's no more words. And so you come to a wall, and then you go to other words. Well, it must be love. That's a word for you. That's just a word. That's a meaningless word at that wall, because to get past the wall, like the wall around this Medina. In the beautiful language of Teresa, in the interior castle, she says, to get to the 4th mansion, God comes for you. You can't get there on your own. There is no way you can get there on your own. And even within the Hindu tradition and within the Sufi tradition, God comes for you. And that is not something that the ordinary mortal can even begin to grasp. How does God come for you? What is that? What is the experience of ecstasy? What is that? Doesn't make sense to the. If you're on this side of the wall, all you have to do is open this curtain and see a wall. If you're on the outside of the wall, the experiences of the people on the inside will never, ever, ever make sense to you, because they don't have the vocabulary, but more than that, they haven't been invited. They haven't been invited. And the reason they haven't been invited, if you look deeply into the world of the mystic, is their soul does not have the stamina for the experience of mysticism. You have a small mystical experience, a beautiful small. You're given small ones, almost as if to say, "Can you handle this one? Can you handle that one? Will this one shatter you? Will that one shatter you? Will you block out this much light? If I give you a little beam of light, are you going to block it out? Will you deny that that happened to you? The world that I'll let you see with this little beam of light, can you manage that much more truth? If I illuminate this much more, will you deny that you see that much more? Is that too much for you?" So I chose this poem from Kadir. Thank you so much. Friend, hope for the guest while you are alive. Jump into the experience while you are alive. Think, and think while you are alive. What you call salvation belongs to the time before death. If you don't break your ropes while you are alive, do you think ghosts will do it after? The idea that the soul will join the ecstatic just because the body is rotten, that is a fantasy. What is found now is found then. If you find nothing now, you will simply end up with an apartment in the city of the dead. If you make love with the divine now, in the next life you will have the face of satisfied desire. So plunge into the truth, find out who the teacher is, believe in the great sound. I love that. Kabir says this, when the guest is being searched for, it is the intensity of the longing for the guest that does all the work. Look at me and you will see a slave of that intensity. Isn't that, look, believe in the great sound. This was 8 centuries ago. And the whole idea, if you do not find something now, you will simply end up with an apartment in the city of the dead. That is one of the most powerful lines I have ever read. You're going to end up in the city of the dead. That's what the 5-sensory world is, the city of the dead. What are you looking for? What is driving you? I have, obviously, this is a subject where I have volumes, absolute volumes, that I can share. And my frustration is, what door do I go in? What door do I go through? And so I've given this so much thought. And I believe there's a deep and profound mystical renaissance at work in the world. But that doesn't tell you why it's at work in the world, nor does it kind of put into perspective the extraordinary changes and the speed at which they are happening in the world. And I thought I would enter through that door, and I'm going to take a very unusual path, but I will get to the point of mysticism in prayer, but I'm going to go through an unusual door, perhaps, because I think that what's important, and the point I want to make, is that the hand of the expression of the divine takes every single form, and that all events are flow into one. And a question that I would ask you through the lens of mysticism is the spiritual path is a path of truth. It is not a path of healing. It's been hijacked in the New Age. And it has been hijacked into a path of narcissism and a path of self, and self again. And it has been hijacked into a path of self-satisfaction and healing. And you will never, in any great mystical literature, see any great mystic tell you or direct you on a path of personal healing. That is simply not what the inner spiritual life is about. Not at all, and it never has been. And you will never see a great spiritual master tell you to go backwards in your life and figure out why you had those parents. You understand me? All of that has been hijacked into self-narcissism. And somehow fed an entitlement that you were born to deserve a happy life from the get-go. That somehow some off-planet God got the coordinates wrong from the beginning. And that your job is to live on this world trying to figure out why God got the coordinates wrong. And that's your spiritual life. Now, I think there's a lot to be said about the fact that a lot of people have started out in this life in brutal beginnings. Absolute brutal beginnings. And I have to say to that end that I think the way healing has been, and this is a different discussion entirely, but to that end, let me say that I think one of the approaches to healing that I think is fundamentally flawed is that there's this notion that you somehow or other move on. You get over something and you move on. You don't get over that. What you do is the events that happen to you form you. They become part of you. They become part of your essential self. And the role of your soul is to take those events and turn them into something that is gold, something that empowers you. If you stay at the ego level, you'll spend the rest of your life asking why it happened to you. And that's where you will waste your life. You'll waste your life going backwards instead of looking at your life and saying, this is what I must turn into gold. There has to be gold in this because this is what was given to me. And the heavens do not make a mistake. They do not make a mistake. They just do. I cannot, if I accept the principle that they make mistakes, then I can never trust anything in my life, and I can never pray. For how will I trust that my prayers have ever been answered? I will only trust my prayers have been answered if things work out the way I want. Do you see? It puts you in the position of deciding that only if I get what I want will I believe my prayers are answered, and you will live in a world of doubt and fear for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life. There will be no interior sense ever that you trust, nor will you ever be able to access that inner intuitive voice that you know in your gut actually exists. The voice of the infinite. You will be forever searching for that, but you will define that voice as you will want that voice to be a certain voice that only speaks to you in a certain way. First, and you will expect that voice first and foremost to prove itself to you by apologizing for your childhood, or apologizing for the wounds, and making everything better, first and foremost. And how you will want that to be righted is that you have a debt you expect to be paid from your wounds. And you will hand that debt over to the cosmos, and you will say, this is what you owe me. And until that's paid, I will not believe in you. Are you following me here? And to that extent, that is why every single human being, their life holds an unexplainable mystery. An unexplainable flaw, something in there will appear to you, will happen to you, something that defies your sense of the finite, that eventually becomes your path to the infinite. These two worlds will become what's called juxtaposition. They will conflict. So that you will have to say, this doesn't make any sense to me. Something has to shatter your senses. Where you say, this world doesn't make any sense. I can't navigate this world I don't trust this world. That experience of not trusting this world is scheduled in your life. It's not a mistake. It's not an error. It's in fact scheduled. As incomprehensible as that may seem. Whether that comes through, whether it begins early in your life, through, how did I end up with these parents? Whether it's a quest for, what am I meant to do in this world? I feel like I have no purpose. Whether it's a sense of I feel so alone. Whatever that quest is, that sense of where do I belong? What is the meaning of my life? Or I feel like I have no stability. Whatever that sense of emptiness is, that will come to everybody. That will come to everybody. So, I wanted to frame the here and now for us in a sense of significance and importance, because I think I've said to several people that if I had one wish at this time that could be fulfilled, it would be that I could go 100 years in the future and look back and see how historians were writing about the period we are now living, and what they would say about how we managed this time. The fools we are making of ourselves in many of the decisions we're making, because we are living the most extraordinary time of human civilization. Human civilization, not social transition, but human civilization. And that is a big mouthful. Historically, and those of you who know me know that I am a lover of history, and that I frame everything in history. History is the language of change. It is the language and the study of human decisions, of what transports us from one era to the next, of what carries us. And in studying history, you study the mysteries of humanity. You study the intersections of the divine with humanity. You study when the divine planted its mystics into humanity. Why was Israel started when it was? Why did Muhammad incarnate when he did? Why did Christianity begin when they did? Why did the Buddha come when he did? Why did the Dalai Lama leave Tibet when he did? All of these movements of the great spiritual masters were not accidents. None of these great movements were accidents. They were all divine timing. All divine timing. They all, when they begin, why do they so many of them parallel the beginning of astrological ages? Why do they have the language of astrological ages written into them? So many of them are so rich. These questions encompass the whole cosmos. We miss so much when we don't ask these questions. When you don't incorporate the whole cosmic field into what you look at. When I present the question of how much do you want to see? How do you want to relate to this world? Which is a fundamentally mystical question. It means that when you look at the world, do you want to see it archetypally with your soul, spiritually? Do you want to see it through that lens that says, God, talk to me through the world? Or do you want to project yourself onto the world? Meaning, I just want to see what I like in this world, but not what I don't like. Which world do you want? Which world do you want? I have a prayer here that I absolutely love. I love this prayer. It's a prayer for the end of the day, not the beginning, but I love this prayer. Now that the sun has set, I sit and rest and think of you. I blend your world with mine and my world with yours. Simple as that. Now that the sun is set, I think of you, and I blend my world with you and your world with mine. And you can say, now that the sun is rising, I am blending my world with you. This is a prayer of merger, of consciousness that says everything I see, everything I am blending. You are everywhere. This is I am one with all. You are everywhere and in every one. A prayer like that sets a high bar. It means that no matter who you look at, you have to see the face of God somewhere. Okay, so that means the world, the divine talks to you you are setting a high mystical bar. Without that perception, you are saying, I'll decide who's divine and who isn't. See the difference here? But if you set the bar that high, and you decide everybody is the face of God to me, everybody, what you are going to have to do, what you're going to discover is all the demons you have in yourself that don't agree with that. And this is where, in the language of the great mystics, your journey into hell begins. Because you discover that what prevents you from seeing the face of God is not what's out there, but what's in here. Because when you look at someone and say, I can't see the divine in that person, it's not that person. It's something in you that is preventing you. And you have to say, what is it? Something in you says, well, I'm afraid that person's going to be liked more than me. I'm afraid that person is what? Well, is nicer than me. Is going to get more than me. Is going to what? Is going to what? Talk to me. Is going to take everything I have. Is going to what? Is going to what? And that's where you have to get to the point, if I were your spiritual director, of saying, and in whose hands is your destiny? That person or the divine? Where do you put your faith? Come on, let's get back to center. So you decided that this person who walked in the room is in charge of your life. Is that what you're telling me? Okay, let's go through this. Let's vomit that demon. Because if you do that, you will engage all your negativity on that person. And that person will, in the language of Teresa of Avila, become a reptile and get over the wall into your soul and eat you alive. These are the things that become cancer. These are the things. It's not your childhood that is the root of cancer or what people have done to you. It's what you want to do to them. Make no mistake. It's your plotting, your darkness. This is what therapy doesn't get to. Therapy doesn't deal with vengeance and the plotting human beings do. Right, but most. If you read the books, you don't see chapters on vengeance. No. Do you? Right. It doesn't get there.
The person's going to get and have something that I'm not worthy to have?
I bet, yes. Yeah, they're going to get something that I'm not worthy to have, or they're going to take that down, or how being humiliated, and I really want to succeed in life so I can get the people who humiliated me. These are plot lines that people have. Trust me, I've taught sacred contracts for so many years. And the first level of the contract is I need something glamorous. And they always think it's an occupation. And what they imagine it is one occupation, so that they can return to the people who humiliated them and say, see how important I am, and with this importance, I'm going to make you grovel. I'm going to punish you. And I'm going to punish you for a long time. And I've never seen that in a book, but it should be.
Over and over and over.
I'm sorry?
Like we'll punish ourselves over.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right, absolutely. Okay, so let's begin with the here and now. I'm going to take a really unusual trek, so you have to kind of hold on to my coattails. Okay? Because we're going back to 1944. And I'll bet you anything that from now on you're going to see this mentioned. You're going to see this referred to. In 1944, Oppenheimer split the atom. Okay, so now when I talk to you, I'm going to do this in parallel realities, and you're going to have to hold multiple realities simultaneously, okay? So here we have Oppenheimer, and he splits the atom. And he's in a laboratory, and he does that with his crew. Okay, over in this column, we have mystical consciousness, which is something we're going to study in this workshop. One of the governing laws of mysticism is that what is in one is in the whole. Agreed? What does that law mean? What does that mean?
It happens in one place and what happens in another place.
It happens everywhere. What happens in one happens everywhere. So if he splits the atom, it means all atoms are split simultaneously. He split the archetypal atom. which means that when he split the atom, all of us, all life, went into a parallel dimension. All life slipped into the domain, a different relationship with time and space, like that. All life slipped into the quantum dimension. It wasn't, the only thing humanity's been able to do is figure out mathematics is in that quantum dimension. Science is in that quantum dimension. But what they are failing to realize is we're in that dimension. We are living in that dimension. We are, not just our science, not just our math, but we are. Because we are now living in two worlds simultaneously. And we are trying to figure out the technology of this new world, this new psychic field that we live in. We're creating energy technology. What is the quantum world? To put it simply, it is a world where in the previous world, pre-Oppenheimer, that world had a watch on that moved everything this way, logically, hour by hour by hour, in slow motion. It was a world that functioned on the idea that matter came before energy, if energy had any authority at all. Are you following this? Oppenheimer blinked, and all of a sudden, the world went whoosh, and now energy came before matter. In other words, he turned the world upside down. And what happened was, the way it really is took over the illusion of how it wasn't. He shattered reality. In physics, Einstein, oh my, look at that wave particle. We create the internet, which is a physical extension of how we've been communicating all the time. We've always been a psychic internet. We get the template of holistic medicine. I think we're one big, huge oneness. The idea of oneness. I think everything's one big, huge wholeness. This has been mystical consciousness since the beginning of mysticism. This is what a mystical vision looks like. Oh my, everything is one. The difference between how a mystic understands the world cosmic view and how science is beginning to understand it is that the mystic sees all of this as the active force of God, and therefore it's conscious. And that the dialogue between this activeness of the divine and the human being is prayer. Prayer. For the scientist, this is a system of natural laws. Look at this: gravity, action and reaction, cause and effect, the speed of light, the speed of sound. It's law. For the mystic, it is law. It's the laws of the soul. The laws of the soul are identical. Your soul has a law of sound. Your soul has a law of action and reaction. These are the laws of creation. Your soul has a law of cause and effect and magnetic attraction. And it's set in motion by the graces in you. By the graces. Your graces set the laws in motion. The laws in motion. By the graces, by how you perceive the world. If you perceive the world as a theater of the divine, you must function at that altitude. If you see it as the theater of the divine and the theater of the finite, that's the level that you function at. That's the level you function at. Therefore, it's conscious. This is a conscious theater. The earth is conscious, nature is conscious. All life is conscious. I find it so extraordinary when these scientists are saying, I think, isn't it amazing that a gorilla loves its baby? I think we'll get a grant and study this. The stupidity in those people. The stupidity in these people is off the charts for me. It's like funding their stupidity. I am astounded at how stupid they are. But they think this is advancing. And it just is showing what has happened is that this is a product of the, quote, enlightenment. And in keeping with the paradox of the divine, our enlightenment turned the light off. The enlightenment that began in the late 1400s, in fact, was the beginning of turning off our inner light. Because we began to take a reasonable look, a reasoned look at the universe. Everything had to have a reason. I wonder what the reason for this is. I wonder what the reason for that is. And the end result was everything that couldn't reason ceased to have value. Trees can't reason. Nature can't reason. Women don't reason very well. They're very emotional. No. It's not even funny. How did women come to be abused? They don't reason very well. Intuition, the mystical sense, started to frighten people. Oh, that doesn't really exist. Ooh, that's weird. Ooh, that's weird. And you yourselves don't trust it. You yourselves doubt it. And your women, the female, you yourselves, how many women have said to me, oh, I thought it was weird. Women don't trust their own mystical sense. They deny their own. Because you've bought into the system that reason governs the soul. You bought into it. And now what we have is a world that's built on the illusion that we are reasonable. Does this look like a reasonable world? What we've reached is the end of the age of reason. And what we have now is a world where our crises cannot be reasoned with. There is nothing in this world, not one thing, not our world problems, not our crises between nations, nothing in the Middle East, nothing in the United States. There is not one thing that can be solved with reason. We do not have problems, ladies and gentlemen. We have predicaments. Problems have solutions. Predicaments don't. We are in a field of predicaments that will take us to a different level of response. They cause us to respond to them. If you think that a piece of legislation can go up to a glacier and say, sign this and stop melting, what we will discover through these problems is the folly of our arrogance. The absolute folly of our own arrogance. The absolute belief that money can solve problems. Money does not, and so the financial system is collapsing. We will discover that all the problems that are going in the predicaments that are bringing us to our knees cannot be resolved by any of the old systems. Why? Because we are coming to the end of the era of the fossil era, of that form of consciousness that says everything can be controlled and reasoned with, the finite world. And as such, there is a quantum world that has moved the solar world, that world of mystical consciousness that is emerging simultaneously as if to replace it at the same time. The laws of science that Oppenheimer released, the laws of energy and the world of energy consciousness that are moving things in the blink of an eye, as if you could think of it as an apartment building, that's the lower floors. But if you moved up to the penthouse, up here, those are the mystical laws of consciousness. The laws that say, if I pray for you at a distance, you get the grace that fast. Why? Because there is no time and space in the mystical world. There is none. What is in one is in the whole. What I do to you, I do to everyone else. If I take the teachings of all the great mystics, now you're going to get why all of them were telling the truth. Not what's true of the truth. In the Muslim world, they pray 5 times a day. They pray to Mecca, to one power point. There is holiness in that. There is a united holiness in that type of prayer. Would that all traditions understood that? Would that all traditions prayed like that? This world could be transformed in a New York second if all traditions decided, I think for 1 month, we will all pray together. That's it. It would change. Human consciousness would be changed so dramatically, if that just shifted. If the infinite replaced the finite. If they just used the actual power in their spirituality instead of their religion. If they went for the mystical instead of the religion. And so in a sense, I feel like in the mystical tradition, there is a thread that people are called into the mystical tradition, into the mystical path. That there is a sense in a person that says this world that I'm living in is not quite enough. Not quite enough. It's not quite enough. There's whatever quite not enough means. It may express itself as a genuine emptiness, or it may come across as simply a mental curiosity. It doesn't have to be an earthquake or a trauma, or you may find yourself just happen to sit at a lecture, and it may be one of those things like, I don't know why I'm here, and all of a sudden you hear something, and it engages you. As Teresa said, any door the divine will take. And it opens something in you. And in keeping with the speed at which the quantum world works that we live in now, The world, what you're learning now is the speed of your soul, the management of your soul in harmony with the nature of your ego. This is an arduous task. This is an arduous task because what you're learning is that you have two fields in you. Two fields. And that the point of conflict is that these two worlds collide constantly. They collide constantly. They are not naturally harmonious because one knows it's going to die and the other knows it won't. One prefers touching what it owns. It's got an appetite for the immediate. Excuse me. It needs to see the consequences of its choices all the time in the world. So it's very difficult for the ego part to trust the interior. Now I'm going to take a pause here, and I'm going to ask you all to stand up and take a breath. You're still on jet lag. So I'm going to give you a 2-minute stretch time. Take a little stretch. Okay. I want to give you some thoughts to dwell on. I love the word dwell. I want to redefine or give you a definition of prayer. Prayer is a dialogue with that unseen, with the unseen universe, the power between the visual spaces in our life, the power between them. Prayer is that the power of prayer is first and foremost your means of transportation out of your 5 senses, away from your 5 senses and the endless noise and distractions of this world, across a bridge and into an interior world that the mystics assure you exists. That somehow there is an interior, infinite place where you also exist that is real. That is your place of awe. Prayer is first and foremost your means of transportation. That is what it is. It is your access to the place between worlds. That's how you think of it. That's how you think of it. When we part here, which we will do shortly for your adventure, for our first adventure together, I want you to move in between worlds, to live in this in-between state. So I'm going to plant seeds in you. I want you to pay attention to what you listen to the sounds that draw you, to what you smell, to what you see, to what you hear, to what distracts you and what attracts you. To what distracts you and what attracts you. What is the world you see? What is the world that speaks to you? What is that world that you dwell in, that you walk in? What is that world? What is that world? What is the world that, does it look divine to you? Does it look mysterious? Don't project the divine. Just, how does it look to you? Does it look mysterious? Is your instinct, is your don't be other than who you really are. But is your natural instinct to be repelled? Is your natural instinct to be curious? Is it a combination? How do you walk in the world that you've never seen before? You see what I'm saying to you? Because there is no difference between walking into this world that you've never seen before or into a life experience you've never had before. There is no difference. Buddha would say to you, what is the difference? What is the difference? Picture this as a life experience you've never seen before in your own life. What is the difference? What is the difference? If I transported you home, wherever your home is, and you suddenly pick up the phone and somebody tells you the coordinates of your life are totally different for whatever reason. The stock market fell, this happened, that happened, roof came off your house. Suddenly the coordinates are totally different. And it's not it's exactly as if you'd just been planted in Fez. How would you walk through that? Everything depends upon how you talk to your soul. And whether you walk through it first from your inner world or from your outer. If you walk through with the inner world, you walk through in reflection. If you walk with your outer world, you walk with rejection. Do you hear me? The ego rejects first. The soul reflects. I remember having this, I consider him one of the truest mystics I ever met in my life. He was a Mexican gentleman who was a carpenter. He probably still is a carpenter, and he worked on the townhouse I lived in when I first moved to Oak Park. And his name is Antonio. And a more talented man, gifted man. And I hired him to build all the my desk and the bookshelves in my office, and he did such a masterful job. I asked him at first, what would you charge for this? And he said $2,500, and I said, okay. He did such a masterful job that I wrote him a check for $5,000, and I said this, and he turned around, and I had folded the check, and I gave it to him, and he came back, and he said, this isn't what we agreed to. And I thought, so he would not accept it. Okay. And when I got to know him, and I thought, what an interesting man of integrity. And one day he came in, and he told me that someone had robbed him of all his tools. Now, this was not a man who could afford to go out, and these were his hands, and just replace all his tools. It would be someone taking my book, my desk, and you know that you break these things in. You know them by name, right? Yeah. And I said, oh my God, Antonio, we talked about what are you going to do, where are you going to go, let's go to Home Depot, let's da-da-da-da-da. And I said, how awful, how terrible. And his response was, maybe the poor man needed it more than me. And I looked at him, and I thought, he meant it. He had blessed the man who took his tools and said maybe he needed it more than me. And I sat down next to him. And I looked at him. And I just said, I just need to hold your hand for a moment. I said, I don't know what kind of grace you got running through you, but I think I need a dose of it, because my response would not have been the same, and it should have been. So whatever you got, I need. Because my response would have been hostile, and it should have been something like you. And I have to own that I'm not there. And I said, whatever you have, you humble, beautiful, holy being. So, you find mystics everywhere. And this one was a carpenter, symbolically enough. So, I leave you with that, and let's go enjoy a beautiful day in Fez.